Hi. So today we're going to talk a little more about the old copper complex, things that surround that, and copper in general in the North America and the Great Lakes specifically. Again, we're joined with Dylan. It's important though, because what you have to say is important, and our conversations, I think, were excellent. Anyways, we're gonna. It's not gonna be the only one, and we'll hit. We're gonna do the old copper culture or complex this time to do the second part. We'll maybe do other stuff in the future. And then, but after this video, the next one we're going to do will be mythology, so people know. And we'll be doing the rising and dying gods, because we're going to finish, me and Dylan will finish what me and Corey started, 15 videos of the mythology series. We'll finish that, and then we're going to get into talk about the pre-creation mythology, like the primordial waters and the void and the black, how it relates to night. Anyways, some fun stuff to me, to explain stuff that makes understanding the mythology a lot, I think, easier of the world than trying to look at it all as separate pieces or something. So recently, there was an article came out and said Monteverde, was a different age. And this has to do with the Clovis, pre-Clovis, thinking. So some people, like Graham Hancock, has literally gone like overboard trying to say how used to be that all archaeologists only accepted Clovis first and not pre-Clovis, which, was a thing a long, long time ago. But a lot of modern academics accept pre-Clovis thinking. But then one of the pre-Clovis sites being redated made a new uproar about, what is going on with Clovis, pre-Clovis. So first, just give you my opinion. My opinion, yes, there was pre-Clovis. So I don't think that one site being removed from South America removes other sites that are pre-Clovis. But here's the other thing to me. You know what I like? The truth. That's what I like. If Clovis first is the truth, I'm willing to accept it. If Clovis, pre-Clovis is the truth, which I do think it is, probably, I accept it. I mean, I don't think most academics are as rigid as, the pseudo-archaeologists like Graham Hancock think they are at all. We're willing to, I think most reasonable people, to me, are willing to accept science as fact, whatever science decides it is. When science says, hey, this site we used to think was great, now retested is probably not. We don't go, like they always try to say, it breaks the whole paradigm. No, it does not.
No.
We go, okay, now we understand the facts of the world differently or better. I mean, then you just update. I mean, it's like they think that the science textbooks aren't constantly updated. Of course they are.
Like goodness, like every year at the university, they have you buy a new textbook because it's been updated. Like they'll throw in new test questions, they'll have different chapters, different content, because those fields, they're always evolving.
Right. So to me, that's like the pseudo-archaeologists even proposing such nonsense. It just shows how, to me, I don't see how people take them serious, because they use such. If you had really good evidence, like I try to present, right, with all kinds of things, from mythology to DNA to cultures to archaeology, I try to provide the evidence and let the evidence speak for itself, because the evidence should speak for itself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You'd think.
So that's like this map. So there's another version of this map that I felt was lacking, because they showed, like, I changed 1, 2, 3, 4 of the pictures because I felt they made it look too legitimate, and it wasn't. And so
they gave like a very nutshell take with the information for a lot.
Yes, and also like the 130,000 site, they make it like it's credible. I don't think it's credible at all. To me, there's a whole bunch of reasons why it's not credible. We're not going to go into all that right now, but just to give you a simple thing, it wasn't humans that would have been there, because they didn't leave Africa and get over to that area. It didn't even get to China until supposedly 80,000. Okay, well, then it turned out 130,000 in the Americas. Even if you said there is human DNA, I do know that went with the Neanderthal from the Middle East, Israel, all the way to Siberia. Okay, even if somehow, that's 100,000, not 130 in the Americas. which is even farther. So, there's so many problems with that nonsense. Then the fact that these round little stones that are not like human worked in any way, saying that those are literally what cracked open bones to get marrow. Okay, is this a rotted animal that the meat's all gone and you're only going after marrow? Or are you saying this was a fresh thing that's maybe you killed or died? If that's the case, where's the cut marks from stone tools? Even Neanderthals, if that's who that was, or Desovians or humans have all had stone tools to cut with. In fact, there is 3 million-year-old cut marks. In fact, I'll show it just for the heck of it, just to get people in the head that I don't buy non-cut marks.
Well, yeah, you're going to need a lot more evidence. Like, just to throw it out there, let's say that's like a tiny group of people made it there, like Neanderthals, or maybe not Neanderthals, or like an older hominid group.
Right.
You need a lot more evidence besides that one site to say, hey, there were people here.
Right.
And
so here's
I haven't seen people really talking about that.
Million-year-old stone tools that are not worked very well. So it also shows they're really primitive, whatever, or arcane, and yet it still does cut marks. I'm okay with accepting cut marks. What I'm not okay with accepting is an animal that supposedly was killed or used for food and shows 0 cut marks. And then how about this? They didn't make fires? Where's the fires that backed it up? They're eating this animal, right? They're staying there and eating in the freezing ass cold with the mammoth.
You'd expect a campsite or something like that, or like a tiny hearth,
right?
Like so tent ring or something around there. And
you get my point. Like there's so many reasons why I think that is not credible. Forget that site. And then that one in Mexico, it's probably just geo facts. In other words, just rocks that were fallen and just look kind of pointed. People are just assuming them. The ones down in South America and in Brazil are probably made by cabocha monkeys. Then the thing that they call holes for pendants literally also could just be geofacts. Just somehow bones got crushed and made a little hole. Because once again, to me, if there is enough for symbology to make pendants, where is the stone tools? Where is the like I said, the fire? Where is evidence of human? So I have a problem. Unlike Graham Hancock, that must just accept any spot that makes him think that it's older. I have real questions for some of these spots. I did it, like I said, and I also at the same time do think pre-Clovis is a fact.
Yeah,
or certainly I will think that until they can show me why it's not. So I don't want to go on and on. I'm just saying so. But it really doesn't matter to me. I'm not stuck on it that any of this has to be true. I'm open to what we can prove. Like, I don't even understand why that's even an issue to me. But I guess the pseudo people, they don't care about the.
Well, it's not even just the pseudo people. It's some of the mainstream news organizations that share this stuff. They'll put clickbait headlines, or they'll take snippets sometimes out of context from the article and just put those in there with a couple interview questions or something like that. And then that gets picked up by the pseudoscientist, the pseudo-archaeologist. Right. It gets picked up by the general public, people who don't fully understand the significance of these sites or what the argument is even fully about. And then it just snowballs from there.
I agree with you. Yeah, but like some people, like some archaeologists feel like that all the stuff that the non-scientific sort of articles about stuff is just damaging because it doesn't explain good. I do think it's good. I do agree with you, though. I really wish they would work a little harder at making it more accurate. And, but I like you said, I do know that a lot of it is really because they care about clickbait and not really about science. So unfortunately, we're in that kind of a dilemma. So anyways, but so the hunter-gatherers certainly to me are way more advanced and a lot of stuff going on was way more advanced. And the old copper culture, is in a sense a hunter-gatherer culture, not say agriculture, and that people think about as somehow advanced. But yet they are a complex and, have advanced features to them in a sense and what they're doing, especially culturally.
Oh, definitely. Like for me, from what I've researched, from the Pacific Northwest to groups living in Siberia around Lake Baikal, or even like early Jomon groups in Japan. Like for me, the old copper complex, they're like one of the most complex hunter-gatherer groups I've researched so far. And maybe like it's almost like they're on par in certain ways with the Pacific Northwest. Like you have the copper usage, you have the fish runs, you have the investment in woodworking and fishing technology. And so like for at that time, like even 4000 BCE, when they were like intensively mining on Isle Royale, like at that time, it looks like they're some of the most complex hunter-gatherers on the planet at that time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think it's important for people to understand that, like, because I also think that people like link somehow hunter-gatherers to somehow being all primitive, which I know we already addressed.
Yeah,
but I think that starting with that flawed thinking, or having an idea that you need somehow the information to support, instead of, like I was saying, instead of thinking, is it pre-Clovis or post-Clovis or whatever, just think, I want the truth. And if the truth happens to be either one, accept the truth.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
I mean,
it's really that simple. But a lot
well,
of
it
people,
should be, right?
a lot of people, they'll make like careers out of saying that hunter gatherers can't do anything. Like it's really disappointing, and that's me being nice.
Yeah, it's really horrid that they do that, because it really affects the general public's opinion, which there's no reason for the general public to be this ignorant, but really people have made, like you said, money on keeping them ignorant, because then Fantasyland sounds possible. Like this one guy said to me, well, it could be that Plato's Atlantis, really, was from Egypt and all this and that. And he's going on and on. And I'm like, no, the whole thing was a myth. Even if you think the myth started in Egypt, right? That didn't make it true.
Yeah.
At no point does it make it true.
I mean, even I've talked with some people who think Atlantis was real, like the literal.
Oh yeah,
like,
no, they think
what he describes, and I've told them multiple times. Like even Plato, in his own words, says like, "Hey guys, don't take this literally." But it's like for some of them, it just goes over their head.
But I also think, like we talked before, I think that some of it also is a religious issue. Like people that are want to believe the Bible, or Abrahamic religions or flood myths, think that like, aha, this is a proof of the thing, not understanding really what flood myths have to do, or which ones could relate to the Bible, which I've talked about with you earlier. That there's a certain kind of flood myth that you could say, okay, this kind of relates to the Bible story. Not that the Bible story inspired it, but relates to it. It's a cosmogonic flood myth, or what's considered to be like a creation flood myth, or you could say a recreation flood myth, or a reflex of a creation myth as a flood myth, or whatever. And to make it real simple, because I'm not going to go into all that, is just to tell people that if a mythology of a flood myth says that everything is sort of destroyed and then everything is then recreated again, or like if all people are gone and then you repopulate, it's a creation kind of myth. If it doesn't do that, it isn't. So all these people that go, oh, there's it's like 300 and whatever flood myths around the world. Okay, maybe 30% or something are cosmogonic and the rest aren't. So yeah. Or it could be less than that.
And of course, all those flood myths go back to the end of the Ice Age, when there was like flooding at every part of the planet somehow.
Right. But like I said, when you understand it the way I'm saying cosmogonically, it doesn't even have to be that. It doesn't have to be real anywhere. It's like someone said before about, well, but some floods. And I'm like, just think about it like this. They also talk about a world mound or a world mountain. Should we go look for that? They also talk about a world tree. Do you believe there's such a thing? I mean, that's what I'm saying. I feel like people don't understand mythology as the mythology it is. They want to say, and I'm not saying that there couldn't, like you said, end of Ice Age or whatever, not saying that there couldn't be stuff that sometimes inspires people to develop stories, but to say that that's why is an misunderstanding of the story. Like like I said before, a lot of the stories of the world start in primordial waters, which is like flood world. which is there is no land at all, no birds, no nothing. Like in the Bible, when it has to create everything because there isn't anything. And then when it floods, it goes back to the state of flood world. So it's recreating the creation story. And just like, so it starts off, just think about this, like the Bible. So as an example. So it starts off the Adam and Eve, right? They're the first creation. But then the flood happens. Supposedly everyone dies, and it's all now Noah and his family. So it's just, and like I said too, the first land in the Bible, it talks about happens because the Spirit of the Lord flies over the waters of the deep. In other words, wind dries out the land, which is Enlil does that in the Sumerian myth. He separates the earth from the sky, who used to be one being. The earth and sky were together and came out of the primordial waters as one being, both earth and sky as one unit. And it's called the Great Mountain. So to me, once you understand these myths, it's less reality, more like freaking cartoon fantasy world.
Yeah. And some of the myths that I've read, they come off that way.
Because it's a childlike understanding before science of what is occurring in the world. I don't think that they're 100% making up. So they are, I think, looking at nature, but understanding it like a 3-year-old trying to explain to you what the hell's going on. And you're like,
yeah, they're trying to explain physics and science and everything else like that using their understanding at that time,
which is almost nothing.
Yeah, and the problem is like that can stagnate and get like put into giant books like the Bible. And even after centuries and centuries of learning more, you still have these devout groups that are saying, no, this old story, this collection of old stories is the literal truth about everything that's going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here, I'll show you a picture real quick, then we'll move on. So this has to do with the Sumerian idea of the sky and the earth as a mountain and one being before they separated.
Okay.
So it comes out of the water. It's not in the water anymore, but it's not really.
Yeah, you can like see it. Is it rising up or is the water going away? Because like, are those clouds?
Both. Yes.
Okay.
All the
above.
It's like
so yeah, it's like rising up, but the water's also going down.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're being dried out by the wind. So eventually the wind separates these, where in the myth, of course, it's not reality, separates us, and the sun, who's now resting in a sense on top of the temple, on top of the mountain, just goes up in the air, and the clouds and the earth then is pushed down, in a sense, or separated, and becomes the earth mother and the sky father, which is type of mythology we'll talk about for sure. But anyways, just so people understand that you don't need it. It doesn't need to be like conceived of, or like, where is that at? That happened. Really? You don't get that that's a story? It's like complete nonsense? Okay. Anyway, so could go ahead and explain, because we're going to start here, go ahead and explain the old copper culture, this picture, and also explain a little bit like what you do, how'd you get into this, real quick.
Okay, so I'll start with how I got interested in all this. Like back in 2017, 2018, I was researching astronomy, was really interested in astronomy and mathematics throughout high school and even before then. And when I had started researching the origins of astronomy, like with the Sumerians, with the Islamic golden age of mathematics, before that got really pushed down, and even in India, I started watching those on YouTube, and I eventually got recommended videos about like flying pyramids and like extraterrestrials coming down, stuff related to astronomy and lost civilizations. And I hadn't seen stuff like that before. I think I'd heard about it in passing, but to actually sit down and watch one of those full videos, I hadn't done that. And so I watched some of them, and I was thinking, okay, some strange ideas, but I wasn't familiar with archaeology.
Right.
And so it's around that time when I started researching archaeology on my own, just bits and pieces, and familiarizing myself with what these other alternative researchers were doing, especially Graham Hancock, because I had been getting a lot of recommendations for him in my YouTube algorithm. And throughout university, I was researching the Hope Well and what they were doing with earthworks and copper, because a lot of their earthworks really look oriented to solstices and lunar cycles. And so that was really interesting for me. Not just that, but how their earthworks are really geometric, like almost perfect squares, perfect circles, things like that. And when I was doing all that, I had learned about this older culture using copper that existed around the Great Lakes. And that culture is called the Old Copper Complex. But other people, they call it the Old Copper Culture or the Old Copper Industry. And I had that mapped out in Google Earth Pro, and I was looking around for like a database or anything like museum quality for where their artifacts were located, because at that time, like 3 to 4 years ago, I was thinking, okay, here's this culture, it's known about, it's being written about in professional literature, there should be maps or something for their artifacts, that way I can map these out to better understand what people were doing, where items are flowing, things like that.
Right.
I came across Monette Bebo Reinhardt's books on Amazon, picked those up, read through those, and she has the artifacts listed out in data tables. Like what the artifact is, its significance, where it comes from, the museum or private collector who has it, and how many. And so I started mapping those out, and during that time I noticed different hotspots where copper would cluster around the map. And so I had to go into other literature outside of the Old Copper Complex to see what these other groups were doing and how different they really were. Because I have a quote up there from Susan Martin. She's still considered one of the authority figures for info on the Old Copper Complex. She pretty much wrote the book on it back in 1999 called Wonderful Power. And one of the things that archaeologists and historians have noticed about the Old Copper Complex is there seem to be regional variants, something like that. There are, if you look to the east with the Laurentian Copper Complex, a lot of groups over there are using slate tools and other stone objects that have been ground down and polished, like the gouges. When you head over to the west, which I have listed as the Oxbow Copper Complex, we don't see a lot of that ground stone or, slate usage, pretty much none at all, just rare finds. What they're doing that these other groups aren't doing is they're specializing in bison hunting, but they're still getting a lot of stuff from the Old Copper Complex, from Isle Royale and the Keweenaw Peninsula up in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. If you look up north, that is the Shield Archaic. Those groups, they're considered small, isolated hunter-gatherer groups moving around different lakes and river networks, and they're using a lot of flake stone, like stuff that almost looks really random, like just finding random pebbles on the ground, like large chunks of stone, breaking them up and just using that. They're not really putting as much emphasis on consistency or standardization that other groups around Eastern North America are doing at that time. But the Shield Archaic groups living at the North Shore of Lake Superior, they're receiving and using a lot of copper. And we still don't have good survey data for Eastern Lake Superior, especially once you head inland into the marshes and lakes and the dense forests that are still there today. I mean, because if you look at a population density map, there's almost nothing out there but small towns and like one or two, like a few cities. And a lot of it's associated with mining and the forestry industry. But the people that have started searching out there, like especially the avocationals, who work alongside the professionals at universities to get these items GPS located. Right. They're finding Old Copper Complex copper items, like diagnostic stuff too, like giant knives, axe heads, needles, spearheads, you name it, they're finding it. Further down south, we have another copper using group. They're more peripheral, but they're interacting and using a lot of these diagnostic items that like the Laurentians and the Wisconsin-Michigan Copper Complex are using.
And isn't that also the area where later the Adena come out of?
Yeah, the Adena, they have their origins like Eastern Appalachians down into Ohio. They start building mounds and burying people with copper and stone between 1000 BCE and 800 BCE.
Well, I know it's after this. I'm just saying
Yeah.
But it's in that area,
Yeah.
and I would assume has influence maybe from those.
Oh, it definitely does. You can see that just with the copper artifacts alone, and with the mound building too, because the earliest earthen mounds that have been C14 dated, they all cluster like in Louisiana. And as time goes on, you start seeing more earthen mounds in the riverine copper complex territory, and
And then
those are
also,
being.
is there a certain amount in the Great Lakes? 'Cause I know some parts have it of shell mounds, because I think shell mounds are or at least go with and relate to earth mounds.
There are some up there, but they're nowhere near the scale that we find in Kentucky, Tennessee, or northern Alabama, or even along the coastline. They're very small. But the shell mound archaic is sending shell items up there, whole shells, beads, pendants, things like that, and some of their other items like grooved axes. The earliest date for those is around 5200 BCE, and those start spreading up north, it looks like, because the dates that we have for those get younger and younger the further north we look. So although there aren't shell middens, shell mound archaic items and influence is spreading up into Wisconsin and possibly further north, as some studies seem to suggest. And besides all these other four groups, the classic old copper complex heartland, as some would call it, is right there in Wisconsin, and especially Michigan's Upper Peninsula, because that is where we have very good data for the mining activity. Hundreds of mines have been surveyed and mapped, going all the way back to the late 1800s. People were starting to map those out. And even on Isle Royale, during the Archaic, especially the middle to late Archaic, between roughly 6000 BCE to 1000 BCE, the vast majority of copper is coming from the Keweenaw Peninsula and Isle Royale. The rest of it is coming from float copper picked up by the glaciers and dropped throughout the rest of the state. But a lot of that is in eastern and southern Wisconsin, and so that's a secondary, though less used, copper source during this time.
So they can tell the difference between the mines where the stuff comes from as a in relation to not being flow or being flow copper?
As of right now, not really. The float copper, it's more of a hypothesis. We have really good data on the mining. We know they were mining and taking copper, or what looks like a lot of copper, out of there, based on the number of artifacts that we have, how they're
right.
still
But I'm just saying the chemical analysis of different mines, because I know, like with obsidian, I don't know copper 100%, but with obsidian mines, I know they can tell which area exactly it came from, because the chemical makeup is just a little bit different. So you can like map, well, this came from here, this came from here.
Yeah, it's a lot more challenging with Great Lakes copper because they're part of the same veins. They were formed during the same process.
Right.
But
So
it looks all the same. So even if you had like a pendant that was made from a piece of float copper, if you checked it for isotopes, it'd point just up north to like the Keweenaw Peninsula or Isle Royale. I mean, and even those two places, they're so similar that some academics don't think that those isotope tests are worth it.
That's
like just for pinpointing, because the veins are so similar with isotopes.
That's unfortunate, because it would be great.
Yeah.
It's like, I know you told me, and I already know from looking before, that there's not a lot of DNA. I really like DNA, because then you know who's moving around. I mean, I have ideas of who I think was there, but it's kind of hard. And also, to me, sometimes the DNA, two things happen. DNA will be done, and people then later do better DNA and realize that ideas change, or they also, what happens that can make DNA tests confusing is they'll change the name. Like it used to be C3 DNA coming into the Americas. Well, then they changed it to 217. And so C217 coming in the Americas. So I know that can make it really confusing when you're looking for stuff, because they're literally changing the numbers or the things, and then that makes it hard to figure stuff out. But yeah, I find that's also sad. That I wonder too if they can do dirt tests, because sometimes
they can do that.
Minerals, in other words, like minerals can be embedded sometimes. And like I know copper gets a patina, and maybe the copper itself can't be tested, but maybe dirt or elements in the patina could point to at least some point where the item was. Because I know the problem, I was going to bring this up about the old copper culture, is jerk-offs grab the copper all over the place, never tell somewhere it is, and then archaeologists have, no freaking idea of where the stuff actually came from, like you're talking about mapping it, which is important to understand that in the context. People should absolutely not be just picking shit up and taking it.
Yeah, that's a big problem we have with the metal detectors community. I mean, there are a lot of good ones. They work right alongside the professionals to get these items GPS located and to get those sites surveyed in the future. And not just that, but to actually send some of those artifacts into laboratories, because the copper will preserve some organics.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Because I know that there's a whole new type of archaeology that's happening where they can get DNA and all kinds of information out of the dirt, where it looks like there's no artifacts at all and no human presence at all or whatever, but yet they can check the dirt, and then that helps them sometimes know what region something's in or area or what specific, because different areas have like different levels of copper, in different areas could have clay in the dirt, could have sedimentary rock or ground in the dirt, or different different sand in the dirt, or different plants, like different trees. So, that has to be from, like you said, Shield Archaic, or, from the Oxbow culture, because it has elements in it that are more related to that area.
Yeah, it's a different soil chemistry. You're going to get that even within just one state or one county.
Exactly.
Like the soil can be completely different at one end of the county and the other.
Yeah, but like you said, too, I know the other thing, too, is things are expensive to send to, testing. And like another problem is, I know, like you already brought up, is a lot of this stuff is in private hands. So they have to be willing to have it tested or whatever. Yeah,
and that's one of the things that Monette Bebo-Reinhardt, she really deserves a lot of applause for that, for like driving around Wisconsin. And, in her book, she has a lot of books, they're thick, filled with information, but with how many people she had to interview just to get a look at their artifacts, it's almost like she went to every house in the state, just knocking on every door asking like, hey, did your parents ever find copper? Do you have anything that looks like this in like your attic or basement or something? But even the data we have now, and literally thousands of artifacts, both in professional museums and private collections, there's still like if you look at the David Pompiani's mining pollution graph, like just how large that spike is and for how many centuries it lasted, it really suggests, and David and I agree here, it really suggests that we're missing at the scale for how much copper they were moving around and making into tools, weapons, ornaments, and things like that.
Right.
That's why it's important to track down as many private collectors as we can, because a lot of this stuff, it's just sitting in back rooms, like a dagger or sword hanging above somebody's fireplace because they think it looks cool. No information.
Well, then the other problem could be that it's a lot of it could still be in the ground.
Yeah.
You're talking about centuries. I thought even if it was deposited or dropped on the ground, 1,000 BCE, that's 3,000 years ago. The amount of leaves. I got to bring this up. It reminded me when I was a kid. We lived for a while next to this house that had a humongous tree in the yard. Holy shit, if you didn't have to several times a year clean up the leaves and the nuts and the bull crap, that it would just drop everywhere.
Yeah. And not just that. The leaves and the process of new soil being formed, that's going to hide it. But even other things like burrowing animals, the freeze and thaw cycle, or even the brand new trees getting their roots into the ground, those can really push
stuff even further down.
Even entire caches and like some parts of cemeteries further down into the soil, if not, destroy them altogether.
Yeah, it's really sad because this is really important stuff that would be great if we had more information on. I think that you've done a good job explaining and offering the information in a more highlighted way. But I feel like, because like someone said before, there's all this copper missing. I don't think it's missing. Just not finding something doesn't mean it's missing.
Yeah, it's not missing in like a literal sense, like it just disappeared or got shipped away to Europe or something to fill the Bronze Age. It's in the ground. It's in wetlands, marshes, lake bottoms. It's in forests that haven't been surveyed as well as they should be. like especially if we're dealing with the old copper complex, because with these people, water, and it looks like their lifestyle really evolved around water. Like if you look at most, I mean, a lot of ancient cultures are like that, especially with fresh water, obviously.
Yeah.
But with the old copper complex, especially, if you look at like a heat map, like a zoomed in heat map of where their items cluster, it's the same places: river mouths, a river's headwaters, lakes, and wetlands and coastlines. The problem is people have been finding a lot of these items in farm fields, in forests. There hasn't been nearly enough effort to like survey lake bottoms, which is something David Pompiani suggested, especially for fish hooks. And I can add to that, not just fish hooks, but harpoons, because they were using harpoons, not just copper, but of bone too. We know that from their Laurentian complex, they found dozens and dozens of harpoons with those people. And if you look up north, Lake Winnipeg, that lake system up there, the one to the east, the large one. If you head southeast of that, there are different river systems there, and there's a river there called the Little Fork River. There was a burial discovered there of a child. The child was buried with red ochre. They found some small copper spearheads, but they also found bone harpoons with decorations on them. The problem is with the acidic soil that exists around Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, plus the well-known freeze and thaw cycle, like one of the worst on the planet.
Right.
It's really challenging to find any of their organic artifacts. But as soon as
unfortunate.
My hope for the future, it's seeing how those canoes were discovered in southern Wisconsin, that canoe parking lot. That shows that in the right setting, especially muddy lake bottoms, organics can be well preserved, very well preserved. And so I'm hoping in the future, more people, especially professionals, ideally, will start surveying these lakes for copper items, copper artifacts, whether from the Hopewell Mississippians or the old copper complex like we're talking about here. And hopefully some of their organic artifacts, whether it's clothing, wooden troughs for cooking food, maybe a drying rack, or like I had mentioned earlier, the bone harpoons. That would be a big one for me.
Right on.
This is a zoom in of like pretty much one of the main, if not the main production center for most of their copper tools. This is where the most work sites have been found, especially in northern Wisconsin. This is where the best evidence for mining activity has been found. And I have them all labeled. Those little like hammer and shovel icons going up the Keweenaw Peninsula, those are all mining sites that are confirmed. And we have the same thing for Isle Royale, northern Lake Superior, that really that long rectangular island, long and narrow, that's Isle Royale. A lot of mining activity on that island, and it looks like most of that stuff is getting sent north rather than south. But like I had said, isotope testing for Great Lakes copper, it's really challenging, and so we don't know
the stuff in Michigan and the stuff there looks the same.
And not just that, like even a lot of their copper artifacts look the same in both locations.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like if you find a spearhead it doesn't really matter where, southern Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin, New Jersey, Manitoba, it doesn't matter. You can lay them out on the table and compare them with stuff they found at Lake Superior's North Shore. They look practically identical.
Yeah, to me, whenever I see stuff like that, real deep standardization, and then people try to tell me that they're just wandering bands that are not complex, I find that just to be ridiculous. There's zero chance that you to get this massive standardization and have no sort of identity to, or someone helping to occur. In other words, it wouldn't happen naturally. If you gave 10 of us, and all isolated the copper, and we knew how to make tools, they would literally not be the same tools.
When I had really started getting into the literature on these and looking at their artifacts, that's one of the first things that came to mind. Because like if you look over to Eurasian archaeology, typically if you have a tradition, really strong standardization that lasts for centuries, it's typically viewed like there's either individuals, like a king, a leader, or like a group controlling the standardization process somehow. That way,
I agree. Yes, I agree.
And with the old copper complex, the standardization, it's widespread across multiple tool categories, even with the slate tools over in Laurentian territory. Widespread, multiple types, but it lasts thousands of years.
Yeah. that has to be a cultural identity at the limited.
And like that's not just speculation. There have been diagnostic old copper complex items with solid dates with preserved organics. Like along the Ottawa River, there is a very important site there called Alouette Island and Morrison Island. Copper was getting sent out there, and people were working it at that spot. Diagnostic copper spearheads, like this one I've shown before, IA Triangulate, they found those there. Northern Wisconsin, they found these there, and they're still being used after almost 2,000 years with almost no change.
Yeah, that. I just don't buy that is a loose group of people.
And I don't either.
Because this is, to me, just because, like, say, the Mongols, people don't understand it's a different context. The Mongol, stuff is highly dispersed, yet centralized in Maine authority, and then they allow the sub-authorities all to do stuff, just like the paramount chieftain in the Americas. Like say in the Mississippi, they know there was like a paramount chief, and then there's a group, say 4 or 5, whatever, other chieftains under that. And then under that, there's smaller chiefdoms. And under that is more like big men controlling family groups.
Yeah, and that's one of the main, it's one of several reasons, but it's an important one for me why I'm viewing them as complex hunter-gatherers, which is different than how the literature currently views them. But
yeah, me too. Like they said about the burials are not done.
They're not
the way that
they're not the same.
I buy that it's simple. I don't buy that the standardization of tools is simple. I don't buy the fact that they can put so much effort into mining. Then someone must be also then doing the feeding. If you do not mining, you can't also be getting food. If someone is managing both of those behaviors, then something is leading, or even if it was leading by a group, it's not.
Yeah, like how are they affording to finance that, And when I say finance, I don't mean like a currency, like a capitalist currency or, something like that. I just mean like, food, clothing, the materials they would need to sustain that for centuries. Like how are you doing that if you're highly mobile, disorganized bands roaming around the landscape and picking up copper every now and then when you happen to find it or when you need it?
And just think, if they were just randomly roaming around, how would it show big spikes in the sediment of pollution? You literally can't have all these things and then somehow try to say, well, it had to be simplistic. What? No. And this too, just because of a group, like where I talked about this before, just because a hunter-gatherer group moves a lot, like say you could talk about going back to the Mongols, they moved a lot. They didn't have until later, they started making sort of like more sedentary cities. Before that, they were on the move constant. It's one of the reasons why there was hard for, say, Chinese people to fight them in a sense, because you couldn't, China could go up into the steppe, bring a big army, go up into the steppe. But if there's no one there to fight, if there's no towns to destroy, to threaten, it's kind of hard. The Mongols just move. And now, you're like, where are they at? And then while you're up there trying to find them, they'll sneak down and attack China.
Yeah, that was one of the northern China's big problems back in the day, was those steppe hordes, the steppe groups who were using horseback, riding across the grasslands.
But that's what I'm saying, moving a lot. Yeah. That's my point. So highly mobile, I don't agree means simplistic. It doesn't. It's a different strategy. There's a sedentary strategy and a mobile strategy. But even there had to be some level of sedentary to provide the food and the clothing, like we talked about. It doesn't have to be agriculture. It's just fishing. You can't randomly fish once in a while and supply enough food for the entire group.
Yeah, like just that mining spike alone, when David Pompiani first started publishing those results, it really shook up the theories, especially like the main theories about the old copper complex, that they were these small egalitarian hunter-gatherer groups moving around all the time.
Right.
That gradually evolved into like the Hopewell and the Adena and the Hopewell,
right?
Like showing that classic trajectory of, they're hunter-gatherers, they're simple. Now they're doing farming, so they're complex.
Right. Did the Adena do farming?
A little bit.
I know that. I know for sure the Mississippians did.
Oh yeah.
I'm not
Mississippians.
100%. I think that the Hopewell might have done some, but because they definitely had a larger dispersal, and they certainly weren't doing corn, right? Because corn didn't get up there, I thought, till I have to look at a map. I can't remember, but maybe 800 to 1,000.
Corn starts.
I mean, there's other things. I think
the earliest evidence we have for corn in the Midwest goes back to like 5,000 BCE, but it's a single piece of pollen. It's not like a corn cob or like a maize cob or anything. It's just one piece of pollen.
Yeah, that seems like way too early.
And then
that must have just been some random thing through trade.
Yeah,
that is no way, because they didn't. Yeah. It didn't even get to. I think it was like 3,000 or 2,000. It even gets to the
Southwest.
Arizona or some California.
It gets around there around that time, the late Archaic. After that really early Midwest date, there's another one in southern Alabama along the coast, but again, it's only one piece of maize pollen. But there is interaction going on at that time between East and West, so that they might have been experimenting with corn at that time, but there's not enough evidence to support like a full agricultural
but is it also possible that they were getting stuff that has nothing to do with corn? Because I know that cattails or whatever, you can literally eat the cattails. You can take and shake the pollen off and make dough out of it. You can eat the stems. You can eat the root balls. I mean, so there's a lot of lakes, a lot of water. There's a lot of places where those cattails could have been growing, and people utilizing that as a crop in a sense, almost like a proto-farming. I don't know that that's happened in the Dina thing. I'm just making a comment that I know there's other possibilities, or that they could have been farming. Doing more excessive gathering that's almost like farming, in other words.
Yeah, that's what we see, especially around the Mississippi and Ohio River confluence when they join to form like the main stretch of the Mississippi River heading south. That's where like the earliest agricultural tradition for North America really starts up. They're at least tending squashes. They were looking after sunflowers and other small plants like maygrass, things that we'd consider weeds nowadays, especially the maygrass and a lot of the other smaller ones. They're at least looking over those to make sure that they're harvestable. Or like how you had mentioned, I think it was the last episode, like people just walking around and dropping seeds.
Yes. There's different kinds of... Yeah.
There's different kinds of agriculture. There's like incipient agriculture. There's horticulture. After those two early dates for maize, there's a corn cob, like a really small one. Flint Dibble, on his Joe Rogan episode, he showed how small they used to be way back then. One like that was found at a Hopewell earthwork.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so at least at that time, and you can see from their interaction networks, they're getting stuff all the way from the Pacific and the Rocky Mountains. And so people are moving back and forth at that time, which...
I think that people are moving. That's why I have a problem with some of the times when the mythologists act like people moved one time and then the mythology developed. Like, dude, people were moving around a lot.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest problems I've seen, like time and time again, going through articles and books. It's like a very, it's almost like they're fitting the evidence into the pre-existing frameworks rather than having to adjust the frameworks to fit the evidence.
Right.
So
the evidence to me is good to understand culture only if you do it the correct way, which is understand all the factors involved. You can't just look at one thing. Like, going to what I'm saying. So they'll say, the mythologists talk about, they'll say, oh, well, there's a certain kind of myth in Australia and people settled there like 40 to 50,000 years ago. So all the mythology must be 40 to 50,000 years ago. I'm like, you do know that the dingo got there 4,000 to 4,500. You do know that Papua New Guinea languages entered northern Australia about 4,000. You do know that the Australian language is only 10,000 years old. You do know that
years. That's a lot of time for tradition.
I'm just saying. So that my point is, there's a lot of stuff that, and the Papua New Guinea was getting stuff from Indonesia, which got it from China. So it just like the dog. So the dingo. So the DNA of that dog that went into Australia actually started in Siberia, then went to China, then went to Southeast Asia, then went to Oceania, and then finally into the dingo, and then also split from that and went to Papua New Guinea as the Papua New Guinea singing dog, they call it, or whatever. So when I say, so these ideas, mythology like shamanism, which is down in Australia, totemism, which probably relates to Siberia and China, other ideas that could be in either of those places, or even in Southeast Asia, north of Australia, could have gone in at 4,000 and not be 40,000 years old.
Yeah. Just because a group arrives there 40,000 years ago doesn't mean all their traditions arrived at that time too.
And then they'll say, oh, well, but stuff is in the South America, which is similar. And I'm like, yeah, but South America was not isolated either. The last one that went there is also 4,000. Like, the maize people that brought it down?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
5,000, 4,000, I think 7,000 or 8,000 is the north part of that coming down, the north part of the South America from Mexico. So ideas were kept coming down.
Yeah.
Some ideas also went back up, but like the potato, I think goes back up like 3,500 or 4,000 into Mexico, maybe even into the southern, North America. But to me, what I'm trying to say is, so saying, oh, well, this happened, or then they also say, oh, well, Africa has it too. Well, Africa also had people come in at 30,000, at 15,000, at 12 to 10,000, at 8 to 7,000, from 7 to 6,000, from 5,000 to 4,000. Also, so multiple times that new ideas could come in. And so you're looking at, this reminds me, this one guy goes, he's a French person that says that all about the Gauls. He's really big about that. He says, oh, the Gauls have some religious ideas that match Papua New Guinea. And I said, yeah. And the two different cultures actually went down to both areas from Siberia. So they could actually be ideas from Siberia that get, just like people don't understand. The reason why like the Pacific Northwest and say Viking, Nordic stuff sounds sort of similar is because northeast Siberia went to both. But before North Siberia was there, which is that happened at 4,500, that ideas went from there all the way to Nordic. But they had already left Lake Baikal 5,000 to 5,500 to go up to that area, and then they go across to North America. So then the remnants of that then goes and becomes Nordic or relates to that. So to me, it's like, just because doesn't mean, what I'm saying, it doesn't have to be older. It can be younger migration that moved the stuff around.
The guy who talked about Gaul and like its apparent relationship to Papua New Guinea, was he suggesting that Gauls had actually went to Papua New Guinea and brought those myths there? I
don't know what he's trying to say. I think he may have been trying to, you understand, some of the people, especially do mythology, sometimes they try to go like outrageous stuff, like 70,000 years ago this idea was there, and now it's just left in these two cultures that are nowhere, they've never touched. And you're like, but they kind of have. Both from Siberia, and I can show you which cultures at what time and everything. So that's also what, like I said, I feel, which I like that the mythologists are thinking and trying to stuff, but sometimes their conclusion built off of limited understanding of migrations is literally an error.
Yeah, I've been thinking the same thing, and not just going through your blogs, but reading literature on North America's archaic, because like with the red ochre, it's found across the continent throughout the archaic, especially from 4,500 BC to 1000 BCE. Not only that, its association with shells, specific forms of pendants and other ground stone items. The similarities, they've been recognized and talked about in the literature, but it's almost like so many academics. I say that respectfully. I'm only an avocational, but it's like a lot of them are missing the fact that information and knowledge can move across trade routes. Not only that people didn't stop moving once they entered the Americas. They were moving around a lot, which you would expect because they're hunter-gatherers.
Right. It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But and so I don't think that it's like like the pseudo archaeologists, they think, archaeologists or whatever are intentionally not understanding things. I don't think that's correct at all. But I do think that sometimes they have a limited perception of what's happening, or that it was like I told someone before. When I didn't know like the myths or the DNA and the migrations, it was confusing to me. And so when people would say things, I would feel like kind of skeptical, because I'm like, yeah, I don't know. That doesn't sound right to me, or what I didn't understand. But the more you understand, like in detail what's happening, then you understand, oh, okay, so it's just more complex.
Yeah.
The problem we have is we have this very uncomplex. Just like it reminds me when people say, well, archaeologists say the reasons pyramids were built is just because people could stack rocks that way. That's a way maybe of, you're talking about a building technique, that stacking rocks in a pyramid is effective. But why did they want to make it is a whole different issue.
Yeah.
It's too simplistic to just thinking, well, it builds that way easy. Okay, well, why did people want to build a 300-foot mountain?
Yeah, why would you invest that much effort and injury and loss of life just to stack rocks?
And then say, oh, well, their ego. Well, it's still not. Egos doesn't explain it either. It also to me it acts as if religion is not a factor, when we know that absolutely it is a factor.
Of course.
Religion and culture are massive reasons why we do tons of dumb shit.
Oh yeah. Definitely. Oh, good. You hit the nail on the head with that one.
And some people for culture stretch their ears out when it's super painful and whatever, and also you can't sleep real well. I had nipple rings in, and I tried to move one time, ripped out my nipple ring, took the sumbitches out, because fuck all that. But I now have one of my nipples got ripped. Why would I do some dumb shit like, you know what I'm saying?
Gosh.
I'm just making a comment. We do dumb shit that doesn't really make functional sense. And so I think that people sometimes try to give like functional reasons to things that really that's not appropriate.
No, especially looking at
you know what I'm saying?
Deeper in time, especially with hunter-gatherer groups.
Yeah.
One thing that I've noticed, and it's not a bad thing. It's good for getting a general sense of how they'd eat and food security. It's called optimal foraging theory.
Right.
What I've noticed is, it's like a functional theory. Like they'll eat these certain foods, like these foods, like squirrels, shells, things like that. Those would be considered starvation foods. They want to go after the higher fat, high in protein foods, stuff like that. What it leaves out is, like with shamanism or other traditions that see the world as being animated and filled with spirits.
Yeah, animism.
So animism, but not just that. Shamanism too, I'd add, because
but just so you understand, shamanism is a branch off of animism.
Yes.
So is totemism. They branched separately to me. They didn't branch like one after the other. They both branched directly off of animism. One is totemism is about like this world stuff, like don't eat this, don't have sex with this person, don't whatever. And shamanism is more about the afterlife or connecting to magical thinking. So they're two different things. This is a thing that shows they tested all these little red dots on the map on the upper right. These are where this information came from. Hunter-gatherers in these areas. And then this was the conclusion. I added totemism because I rechecked all these and gave my thoughts on what it is. So, but what they came up with, 100% of them are animist. 79% had afterlife beliefs. 79% was shamanism. So it is literally pretty high. And then you have ancestor worship is 45. High deities, like sky gods or whatever, are 39%. So it's way lower than how many are animist. And then, but you go all the way to the bottom number 15%, that's how many think the deities are active. An active high god means like the Bible, where he like cares about your life and is doing things or testing you or whatever. An inactive one is like almost like pantheism, sort of, where he creates the world or whatever, or is part of the world, and then that's it. And then it doesn't help you, doesn't really, a lot of times they call it an inactive, that shows that the belief in them is higher than the belief that they do anything. So just showing that they're not, gods are not a big deal.
Yeah.
And compared to, as you see, the animism.
Mm-hmm.
Animism is a massive big deal. And then down that chart in the left quadrant in the bottom, that is how totemism works in Australia. Aborigines, Dreamtime. If you notice, it's massively complex, which I've told you before. Problem when people try to think about these things, they think about them as simplistic, when that's an inaccurate way to think about these mythologies. That's why, just like to me, when people make, a thing of sweeping claims of DNA or sweeping claims of what, archaeology is showing or not showing, to me, people make sweeping claims without knowing what the fuck they're talking about or what's available to understand. And it's always way more complex than their limited understanding of what's going on.
Yeah. There's a lot of that in the news and on social media nowadays.
Right. And so, me, I like to show you the more reality, which is harder to learn, which is probably why I'm not as famous, because my stuff is like long and complex and
but you get into the nitty-gritty details, and that's why I like your content. It's like it's the stuff I'm looking for. Like, I remember when I first found your blog, I was like, whoa. like books and just books and books and books, like huge, like university level blog posts, hundreds of pages long, on like one topic, and then you have another one for another topic. I was really blown away when I first found your work. Like I was saying with the optimal foraging theory, so like you have your animism, which is widespread, like 100% of those groups that were surveyed,
100%,
and then you have some totemism, and then you have your shamanism, and then way further down, you have your belief in gods and active gods. So let's say you had a shaman or a ritual specialist as part of a group, and optimal foraging theory would say, well, if they need something, like there's a person there, they're going after a high fat, high protein meal. Optimal foraging theory would probably say, well, they're going to go after that thing. They're going to kill it. They're going to butcher it. They're going to eat it, use its hide, its bones, whatever. Well, what if that shaman or that ritual specialist asks permission, like some groups have been documented doing, like as for trees, like asking permission to kill that mammal?
And sometimes they'll say no.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
I know times where they say no, you can't go hunting for whatever, because this is not the right time.
Yeah. So like, what if they're starving? Optimal foraging theory would say they're going to get that mammal or that group of mammals. But then you have the religious side, the animism, the totemism, or the shamanism.
Right. So to understand, the totemism would tell you what you can eat and not. Like totemism would say you can't eat these kind of fish. Or like talking about that's a case like down in South America. There's a culture that lives by the coast, and they eat all but one kind of fish, because that fish is the totem fish. They'll kill you if you eat it. You're not supposed to ever eat it. And the same thing, like in I think it was Italy during I think it's like 20 to 15,000 years ago. They were doing a lot of hunting, but there was, I think it's elk or it's a deer, I can't remember now, but they would literally not hunt it. There's like no bones of it at all, even though they're definitely in that area. And it has to be, to me, a totemistic thing. We don't eat that one thing. Now, I agree with you, like say for shaman, a shaman could say that the ancestors say this, but the behavior of still not doing it is more of a totemistic thinking, because animism and shamanism don't really have like taboos. That's more of a totemistic thing of how you're supposed to behave. There's less of that in shamanism. It may talk to people or whatever, the dead or the spirits or whatever on your behalf, or talk to the wind, so it's good sailing or something. But I'm just trying to help you understand. So when people think about these, they're separate things. They have separate worldviews, almost like.
Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you have a ritual specialist and they go out and their culture, like their rules, their norms, it informs them that they have have to communicate with this tree or this
Right.
high value food source to get permission to kill it.
That's correct.
Would that be considered totemism, like a taboo?
Well,
Like
the person doing it is probably a shaman. Then the behavior of asking them still could be shaman, because it would depend on totemism. More would be like making the rule that you're not supposed to eat them.
Okay.
That definitely is totemism. Or like you're not supposed to have sex with those people in that clan, or even deal with them because they're not us. That's more of a totemism thing. Sometimes this stuff blends together because at one time they were separate, but then when they mesh together and then their versions spread out, you start to get like a web almost of different stuff. But yeah, to ask it and to do all that still sounds like shamanism, because you're talking to the totemism wouldn't really talk to the ant. They may say that animal is our ancestor, or represents like a pseudo ancestor, and then because of that, like say whatever, it's an elk or deer or rabbit or something, we can't kill it. Or if you kill it, it has to be done by blessed by a shaman or something, or only a certain time of the year, or what, they have rules. Where shamanism would be the one talking to the spirits or the animals or whatever, maybe on your behalf of the totemist belief, in a sense.
So like talking with a tree to get permission.
That's a totem. I mean, a shamanist. Shamanist does the talking to the spirits. Totemist did not. Yeah. Totemist, let's say, so you understand too. A totemist would be, if they wanted to say commune with the thing, they don't themselves commune with, that's a shamanist thing. What they would do is do a dance that supposedly brings harmony to the environment they are in, and thus they can go hunting. So maybe a ritual before the hunt could be totemist, a ritual after the hunt where the group like dances and sings or does something or whatever. That would be a totemist behavior to try to get in tune with the environment.
Yeah, and so I guess to put that all together, what I'm saying here with the shamanism and optimal foraging theory is optimal foraging theory. It'll give you a good idea of the foods available in a specific environment and the likelihood, like a statistical likelihood of which food sources are the best to go after and which ones would be considered starvation foods.
Right.
When you apply that to shamanism, like asking permission, optimal foraging theory can have issues then, because you're having
even like what if it's totemism? What if it says you can't eat the elk, but you've got to eat squirrels?
Yeah, that too.
Then so that would throw it out the window completely.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. Like, the understanding the difference is they both could, in a sense, affect what's happening. Just like, think of this. And sometimes too, I feel people make, which there's a joke that everything in archaeology that's different is considered ritual. Well, sometimes I think that we do, in some areas, put magical thinking into too many things. So sometimes I think it's the opposite. Sometimes they don't put it enough. They need to understand more complex religious stuff. But some stuff isn't religious. It's like, it reminds me of the Hazai, right? They smoke marijuana. They do not in Africa, South Africa, and they're animists. They do not see it as magical. They just enjoy how it feels. There's no magical. They smoke shit tons of pot all the time, men and women, but it's not considered anything magical, which is interesting because they do believe there's magical things in the world. You get my point? Mm-hmm. So they don't think that they see it, I feel like, to me, like fixing a need. Like, you eat because you're hungry. You get high because it makes you feel good. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It makes you relax. More like almost we do it now. So I feel like you could look at them without knowing that and go, wow, it's obviously sacred to them. And they're like, no, it's not. I just fucking feels good. Just like feeling full feels good.
Yeah, like being satisfied after a full meal. Yeah.
You get what I'm trying to say? So I feel like both. So sometimes I agree with you. We need to way more understand religious involved. But I do agree with some of the archaeologists say we should be careful and not assume that every goddamn thing happening is a religious behavior.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I agree with that.
So that's why, to me, I do think that probably most of it, say 90% of stuff has some religious connection, maybe. But I don't think that we do need to be careful, because we also have evidence that sometimes things that are being done that we would almost assume has to be religious, it isn't. Or the reason is not religious why it's being done. Same thing like the first marijuana ate, not smoke. And they weren't trying to get high. They were using it as a food source, like a crop. In northern China 10,000 years ago, they were not doing it to get as a ritual or as a thing. So that's what I'm saying. Sometimes things, but later it was, burned, 3,000 years ago, it was burned in, Israeli temple for the element of the goddess, and it was not used in any other context. So that's what I'm saying. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You get my point. So I think that we need to be careful. We shouldn't be like so open, like you said before, your head falls out. But we should also know that we really should think there is a lot. We see the world because of science now, mainly not religious. Even for people that are religious, they don't see every single thing as like, religion happening. We know like, rains, it's not God, and clouds, it's not God, and or whatever, what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Even for people that are religious.
One last thing, I want to point something out with this last map.
Okay.
You see the dotted line, this like blue dotted line going around the map?
Yes, I do. Okay,
that is an interesting area, especially right around Lake Superior and eastern Minnesota. Some of the largest and fanciest tools have been found in that area. And so that's another thing. Not only do you have this widespread standardization that lasts for thousands of years, you have this like tight cluster of like really iconic artifacts, like that giant sword I've talked about before.
Right.
That short sword, that's found in that area. 23-inch, 3.5 pound socketed spearhead found in that area. Really well made, polished spearheads that are unique.
And to me, what time was that being found? Because there shouldn't really 23 inches. That's too long for I would think standard spear needs like.
No, it's right? It's not standard. It's one of the rare ones. They're rare to be found that large.
But then the other thing is, it wouldn't be useful because if it's not like there's mammoths at this time.
No, and not only that, it's the socket. It's fluted. Like they took the time to hammer in like vertical lines all around the socket. I think it has 9 of those flutes. The blade is beveled. There's 2 rivet holes to support the shaft. And here's the interesting thing: the blade, the tip, it's curved, and the whole thing shows barely any use. And it was apparently found in a burial.
Yeah, that sounds like a leader or something, or a shaman or somebody of power. That doesn't sound like a utilitarian thing at all.
So that's another thing to consider. You have this widespread standardization, but this tight-knit cluster around Lake Superior, around a lot of the production and mining sites of these fancy, like huge artifacts that are unique to that area. Like almost none have been found further south, just in that area.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I like how you also have the arrows where they're going different directions. I like that. I like showing and helping understand like how stuff is moving.
Oh yeah, it's just it's speculated reasoning on my part for that, because we know where the copper's coming from.
Right.
We know the main movement routes. They're going along the major waterways because that's where their sites cluster. So it seems reasonable to me to propose that those are some of the main routes for trade.
Okay.
Not just trade, but information too.
Right, and then go ahead and explain this map.
Okay, this map it's looking at the distribution of the IA triangulates these things, and as you can see, the majority.
And these are spears. Do you think that they would have been used for like taking down large animals, or for fishing, or what do you think that they're?
You could use them for purpose. You could use them for both, but I think they're likely using these mostly for animals you'd find in the forests, like bears, deer, moose, bison, things like that. These things, they're not all the same size. Their shapes are standardized. If you find one like this from Manitoba, you head over to Vermont, you'll find one that looks almost identical. Some of them are small, like really small.
Do you think the small ones, like you have on this art, you have a small little like handle. Do you think they could have been like extensions of like a knife by having a longer handle like that? Or do you think that they were all long spears?
No, I think their use was varied, because not just the size. Some of these things have long sockets, others have short sockets. And so you can use them for multiple purposes. You could attach a small one to an atlatl. Different ways to pronounce it. That's how I've been pronouncing it. I don't think it's the right way.
Yeah.
But
Trust me, when it comes to pronouncing stuff, I know a lot of stuff, but trying to pronounce stuff, that's also why I don't like reading, because I try to, the last video I just did on the, which I haven't uploaded it yet, but I finished it on African, Age of African Deities, #2. I try to read some of the African names. Oh, forget it, man. My wife says, you shouldn't even waste your time reading those.
Okay, so like the Atlatl, or I think it's pronounced the Otlach, something like that. North 02, he made a really good point about the pronunciation of that. I think it's the Otlach, something like that. You could attach a small one of these to that, your spear thrower, chuck it. You could attach a larger one to like a longer spear, like if you're going after a bear or something. If you want to do a bear one-on-one, or if you're like getting in a group conflict, or you could use them like I have depicted here as like a dagger. Something I noticed looking at the shapes and forms and working with different clay models based on the real artifacts.
Right.
The socket to blade junction right here, it's ergonomic in a way, because you have the median ridge right here and the triangular shape.
Trying to get so we can get a better view of you showing that.
Okay.
I saw those. I didn't know that those were clay models. I thought you had all these things. Yeah. I think that's pretty cool. I think that's still pretty cool that you spent the time to make clay models. I think that's pretty awesome.
Well, it helps with my understanding, and even Larry Furrow has recommended clay before you start working with copper, because it forms the way you have to form it. It's pretty similar to how you have to form copper when working it by hand. With the triangulate, you have the median ridge running along the back, and the way the blade is formed, it gives it this triangular shape. If you hold it in your hand, try to get a good view of this for the camera. Okay, hold on. If you hold it in your hand, the triangular shape, you see how it forms to the finger? And not just that, the joints and a lot of the triangulates, the socket to blade junction area, it'll slope down. It's not a flat stop. So you can, if you hold the socket in your hand,
you can comfortably use it by itself.
You can rest your thumb on the base of the blade, and it'll form to the way your hand shape. So it's ergonomic in that way. So you could use this thing just by itself as like a shovel or something, or like a little pick for the soil if you're digging up roots or something like that.
Or you could use it to open up an animal.
That too, yeah.
Carve out its innards or whatever.
Like for butchering work, it's thought that they used a different tool for that. It is something called an IB ovate. It's almost like this. The sockets are usually round to oval shaped, and their blades are rounded, like an oval. Really? Yeah, I don't have a model of that. I need to make one, but I need to get more clay first. I don't have any more copper colored clay right now, and so as soon as I get some, I'll make a bunch more models for our future episodes.
Yeah, right. Because like I told you, I do want to go back and talk more about the old copper culture or copper complex, with you, picking more detailed stuff and then doing it like a more extensive. Because I know these videos, I want us to kind of like just get it a general thing, like I like to do a lot, but it's also important to do really distinct stuff. That's me saying about what I think the old copper culture. Go ahead and read that, because I think that's important. Like my ideas of what I think the DNA was.
I think the oldest old copper cultures likely started with haplogroups Q, Y DNA, male, and A2, B2, C1, and D, mtDNA, female, with shamanism and the earth diver myth, with no turtle. Then, after 10,000 to 8,500, haplogroups Q, Y DNA, male, and X, mtDNA, female, with shamanism and earth diver myth with turtle mythology. This is related to evolved ideas from the Middle East and may have had early deities, but not likely the Great Spirit or Sky Chief.
Right, so you understand, like when the early deities would be high gods of the sky.
Okay.
And then later, because I think it's 9,000 to 8,000 likely that you have the Earth Mother, which is also why some of the mythology in the Americas is Sky Father, Sky Mother, and some of the Americas is Sky Father, Earth Did I show you that mythology? I don't remember now. I just did a video.
I have
Well, I'll
that,
do it again because I know
out.
that I just shared it with the last video I did. So it was more on this kind of stuff. So in Mexico and Peru, it's Sky Mother and Sky Father, which would be the older stuff or the earlier high gods in paganism from the Middle East. Then I showed also they have like the Athabascan up in the Alaska has the Sky Father, Earth Mother, showing that it was a later version that came to me. And then that goes down to the center of the United States with the Sky Father, Earth Mother. And all these little different colors are different language families, so people understand. I didn't do Australia. That's why I just left it white. Just so you know, I wasn't trying to. It just means I don't know. I didn't look. And then Africa, I only list Egypt, which has it backwards to everywhere else in the entire world. They have an Earth Father and a Sky Mother. But like I said, Sky Mother was the original anyways to me. So I'll go ahead and really quick show you the one for Africa just so you can see. I added new stuff for Africa.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, and you can see most of them, all the purple is actually the same or similar thing. It's called Niger Congo A and B. The stuff and that sticks out to the west, that is Niger Congo A, and then Bantu or Niger Congo B is all the stuff that goes to South Africa.
Okay, I was just in that because it looks like it would overlap with the Bantu migrations.
It does.
Yeah.
The purple is Bantu from Cameroon to the south. All of that is Bantu. But Bantu is, and the other stuff like the Dongo, people talk about religion, the Yoruba, which a lot of the slaves and voodoo comes from, and the Akin, and just other Fawn. There's other stuff up there. But all of that really is part of the same language family. So and in fact, the most like supreme or gods, which is like a king of the gods, it's more than just a high god. Because a Sky Mother and a Sky Father, I think, is the first high gods. Then a Sky Father and an Earth Mother is the next version of high gods. Maybe at that time, I don't know, or after, because I think it's probably 7,000, 6,000, is when the Sky Father generally becomes the king of the god or a supreme deity, which is like the highest. And sometimes the Earth Mother or whatever is considered second to him in a pantheon of polytheism. But anyways, just showing that's how I see, because I know you're reading just so people understand. Go ahead and keep reading.
Mostly equalitarian, but some emerging special person, proto big man / big woman, big men / big woman, like a council of group leadership. Possibly related to families / clans. Then, after 8,000 to 6,000 years ago, haplogroups CY DNA, male, likely showed up closer to 6,000 to 7,000 years ago, which is more likely than 8,000 years ago, with an increased chance of emerging special person, proto-big man / big woman, big men / big women. Then, from around 3,500 years ago or so, Algonquin speakers likely showed up, mostly QY DNA, male, from the Pacific Northwest, but possibly some CY DNA male with special person, proto-chieftains, big man / big woman, big men / big women, and with the Great Spirit or Sky Chief, or something like this.
Right.
Okay.
And so let's go down to the next picture you have.
Okay, yeah, this is an interesting one that I need to update. It's still good, but I have more sites now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I actually have more information to support this.
Right on.
It's one of the earlier maps I made when I started using QGIS. And what it's meant to show is a theory that I've been working on that sees all of these apparently isolated and regional expressions of shell usage and red ochre burials not as entirely independent developments, but as linked to like a core, like an underlying foundation that was widespread across the continent during the Middle and Late Archaic.
Yeah, I can agree with that stuff that I've looked at also.
Yeah, I'll only have some cultures here highlighted, like the old copper complex being the main one. But if you look over to the east, to the areas that are shaded red, that's maritime archaic territory. Around Kentucky, Tennessee, northern Alabama, I have shell mound archaic territory mapped out. If you look along the coastlines, especially in California, Pacific Northwest, and Florida, all those vertical yellow lines are regions with documented shell rings and shell mounds.
Right.
If you look at those, you'll notice that red ochre burials have been found in those areas, mostly in the shell mounds. And like I had mentioned before, when I had first started researching the red ochre, I was looking at the maps you had produced, especially for the complexity of hunter-gatherers, how a lot of people, especially the general public and apparently the mainstream media, how they misunderstand them too and characterize them as simple. I was going through your article and I picked up on the aquaculture part. I started really looking into that, finding everything I could. And
you're talking about the one I did on understanding complex hunter-gatherers, that they were hunter-gatherers and fishers, right?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. That series of videos and that blog post. There's a section in there you talk about aquaculture and the Pacific Northwest's clam gardens.
Correct.
I mapped out that area where not just clam gardens, the shell mounds themselves, and where fish weirs have been documented.
Right on.
Looking at and this is where it gets interesting. Looking at the rest of the continent, seeing how that association between red ochre and shell mound often goes hand in hand. I theorize that I either hadn't found or the work hadn't been done yet to show red ochre burials were happening in the Pacific Northwest. I came across an article published in National Geographic. I think I'm pretty sure the author's name is Heather Pringle, and she talks about how the tribes up there got in contact with archaeologists to go excavate a shell mound because there were artifacts falling out of it. They found a burial. They found a burial with stone beads in flexed position covered in red ochre. Not only that, they found more than one with that pattern. And so that tells me there's more to this. It's not just a coincidence that we find red ochre
I think,
and shells together.
I think shell mounds and earth mounds and pyramids and dolmens and kurgans literally have a similar connected mythology thinking to them that I feel that people are missing. They're too busy worried about aliens and other nonsense and not thinking about what actually is going on.
Yeah, and I'm going to be getting into that I'm going to be having this part as a map series focusing on different items like the Pacific items found in burials, whether they're like eagle talons or wolf canines or bird items. That way people can have a better understanding that it's a lot more than the shell mounds and red ochre burials. There's this entire funeral package that is shared like across the continent
I think that's important.
Yeah, and
I know bears like especially in Europe and some in the Americas too, has to do with the cosmic hunt, which is the belief that, in a sense, that an animal is chased and killed, and then it becomes stars, or the stars are relating to this happening, like especially like the Big Dipper, which they call like the bear or whatever, the Great Bear. And several cultures, both on the northern Eurasia and in the Americas, see the handle of the Big Dipper, there's 3 stars or whatever, as the hunters going after.
Yeah.
And so it literally can't be like an accident that they're doing. It's literally a shared mythology.
Yeah, and when you can look at it like this, like from the continental perspective, and see that all of these different groups that were apparently supposed to be isolated, they're all doing these like almost identical practices, not just here and there, like within their entire cultural range, century after century. Yeah, and so I'm going to be making some more maps like this one because I have more data now to support it.
Right.
And I'll be getting into like the individual burial items.
Right, and then with me, we're going to be getting more into mythology. You'll start to be able to understand the larger connections that has, because that's an important factor that, like I said, I know archaeologists, great, sometimes they focus on what the different archaeology facts are, and then DNA focuses on DNA. Sometimes they put that together, but I feel like you also have to do it with the mythology at the same time, because then you get a richer picture of what and why. Like, why are they doing the same behavior? Oh, it's just random, but they like it? Or so like this right here is a mythology database. Look at the different mythologies in the Americas and mapping them, like kind of like you do, mapping. See, what I would like to see is someone do this with the artifacts or with the burial. So then you can start to see if there, once again, if there's a connection to what they're believing and what's happening.
Yeah, and the data that I've been looking at, because my GIS database, it's like this when I work on it. I can look at the individual sites. I can put in like entire articles, the quotations, like just by clicking on one of the icons.
But I'm just saying, I think it would be great if you could do that. If you could integrate some of the higher level mythology, stuff with the archaeology and the migrations. Man, that would be fucking awesome.
Yeah, I'm working on it one day at a time.
Yeah, because I really, my goal is that we understand, and if we understand everything in a microscope separately, you're not really getting the big picture of what's really happening.
And that's what's valuable about some other things I want to touch on about this map really quick. Out west, you see the grayish shaded area.
Yeah.
That's a region where the earliest known smoking pipes have been found for North America, like stone smoking pipes that we really see later on in history.
That's interesting because tobacco is not from that region.
There is a species. There's more than one species. There's more than one species of tobacco. There's one that's in South America and I think Central America, but there's another one in Western North America.
I thought it was only in Eastern North America. That's interesting.
No, Western North America.
My point too is it doesn't mean that they were smoking tobacco. It would have to be. It could, But have they done residue for the pipes and figured out what they're smoking?
They have not that I know of for those Western ones, but they have done it for the shell mound archaic smoking pipes, especially one. I think it's called the Flint Ridge. Maybe not Flint Ridge. I think it's called the Flint River site. It's in Alabama. It's a site in northern Alabama, right at the southern edge of shell mound archaic territory. It's a smaller one, like this.
And what are they smoking? Because I know one thing I read, I can't remember now where, but I read where they were mixing buffalo dung with, I can't remember, one or two other things and smoking it. And I was thinking they probably weren't doing it for the same reason that tobacco, like, the sensation, or maybe even to shamanism. They may have also been doing it to, like, maybe as a totemistic thing to connect to the animals or something.
Okay, so they tested that pipe. It was in contexts dated to around 3,500 years ago, and the results showed they were smoking stuff with a lot of nicotine.
Okay.
And to me, looking at the North American context, the theory right now is they were smoking tobacco.
Okay.
The question is, which species of tobacco? Are they getting it from the West, where we have the oldest confirmed stone tobacco pipes, which start appearing in the East at this time, around 4,000, 3,500 BC, 4,000 to 3,500 years ago? Or are they smoking the southern variant from South America and Central America? It's still one of the questions that they're figuring out.
Yeah, I wish we could figure all that kind of stuff, because that really shows trade or movements of people, and also can show you what the different trade and movements of ideas, which is what I also like to figure out is how did these ideas move around? When did they move around? In what context? Like I said, which puts me a little bit different than some people who study, mythology, because I feel like they're doing it a lot of out of context.
Yeah, it's not getting paired well with the archaeology.
No,
or vice versa.
To me, it's barely getting paired. They feel it is, but it's barely getting paired with the cultures. Semi, and then even less with the DNA, and I feel like almost non-existent to the archaeology, which that has to change. Yeah. Because even my ideas, I'm open to, like I said before about the pre-Clovis and Clovis, I am open to adapt and refine or change my ideas if all of a sudden a new understanding can happen. But certainly it can't happen if we're all just guessing and not putting this stuff down like you do and I do a lot of times in maps and figuring it out.
Yeah. Like just with the tobacco smoking topic, like to me, looking at like the shared symbolism, West and East, and how we have confirmed artifacts in shell mound archaic territory, like halitosis shells. Those are native to the Pacific coast. And you look down there, they're doing practically the identical thing. Flexed red ochre burials, shell mounds, making shell pendants, lots of shell beads. They had an entire industry devoted to making shell beads.
I know in California,
and down.
eventually they become shell money. I think at 3,000 or something. They have confirmed that they were doing it as shell money.
Yeah, and a big part of that industry in the archaic was using halitosis shells. And somehow those are winding up in shell middens in northern Alabama and Tennessee.
And in fact, I think even one of the oldest shell monies, I think the Sumerians used it like 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. You were using shells as like the first money.
Yeah, and even before that, there's some people that think during the Neolithic, when the farmers are first heading into Europe, that they were using shells as some type of currency.
And if not, certainly I have a map of that. Certainly we're doing it as a cultural expression for sure.
Yeah.
Because once you go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's even before they started making megaliths and burial chambers like that in France.
Correct.
Even at that early time, they're still bringing in like Mediterranean and Black Sea shells like all the way to Central Europe and further west at that time. Yeah, so that's really interesting to me.
Well, that's why you and me have like this similar thinking of putting shit on a map, man, and looking at it, because otherwise it's hard to understand.
Yeah. And
so sometimes when I map it, that's when I start to understand. So like some people think like, hey, Damien, you think you know everything. Well, you want to know why I sometimes feel I'm closer to that? Is because literally I lay it on a map and then I can finally see it, and then it seems pretty obvious or more obvious what's going on.
Yeah, because if you like, for me, you could do it the traditional way. Read the article, read the book, and try to juggle all these different topics in your head.
Right.
Or like we're doing, like I've been doing, using GIS, reading the articles, putting sections of those articles in GIS itself in like text blocks that I can click on and open up, and mapping out where these sites are found, what artifacts are being found, and other stuff they're talking about in the literature. Get it mapped out and look at it from different perspectives, and like the big picture perspective here, and that frees up your brain to work on other problems related to this, because you don't have to hold all this stuff in your mind. You're looking at it, but you're able to process other ideas related to it.
Exactly. Here's the one I was talking about, where the four top things, little maps, are showing how people came in, the little red lines, and then the types of shell items they were using. And then the second one, they're starting to evolve and diversify a little bit. And the third one, then they're on the left, right, the lines are showing there's a little more diversification and stuff. And then by the fourth picture, it's got colors, because they consider these now starting to become culture, like specific. And I think that this is really interesting, like you were talking about, how these are over time too. So it's not like it just one time it happened. It shows them evolving and moving as they're migrating. And they're keeping, like you said, these and ideas that go back to the shell stuff.
And what's interesting is if you look at the Western Black Sea along the coast, where we find those early burials in the Neolithic with the gold, those cemeteries have a surprising number of red ochre burials. So again, you have, it's a bit later in time, but still that area is being associated with shell and red ochre.
Yeah.
All the way over. It's interesting.
But yeah, I was just, because I know most people don't bring up the shells and the Neolithic farmers. So I thought that I had a thing on that. So I thought it would be good for me.
People would associate the shells with the Mesolithic communities living along the coast. They wouldn't expect it with the farmers in Central Europe.
Right.
Not just that, but they're like importing them from the Mediterranean, from around the Black Sea and the Aegean.
So that in other words, the meaning that they had religiously didn't leave; they just expanded where they were at.
Yeah,
I think it's
something like that. Yeah,
at least that's how I see it. Yeah. So then we'll go to the next one, where you have the different copper stuff.
Actually, these aren't copper.
Oh, these are
diagrams. Yeah, they're stone.
Okay. And then there's the carvings that they made on them.
Yes, that's what that shows.
Right on.
On the left, this is focusing on a specific type of grooved axe, and a grooved axe, like the art you've made, it's pretty much a rectangular block of stone with a giant groove pecked into it. That way you can actually do your lashing and attach your handle to the axe head. This is focusing on a specific style called the fluted axe. The people who made these, the current literature is thinking they're associated with the old copper complex. They went the extra step and added a lot of decoration on these, especially along the working part of the axe. They added vertical and horizontal lines pecked right into the stone. Some of them are surprisingly deep. They're very well made. And on the right, those are just some of the decorations that have been found on those.
Yeah, and I'm sure that probably some of the decorations, especially if they're standardized, have to have some sort of cultural or religious meaning.
Yeah, because some of those you find them on more than one artifact.
All right, so let's talk about this one right here.
Oh, okay, yeah. This is one of the earliest maps I made for the old copper complex using QGIS.
Okay.
I just wanted to get a sense of when you take their copper artifacts, because from my end, when I'm working in QGIS, they're individual icons. So I can look at each specific item, edit its information if I need to, change its style if I'm working on a different type of map, so on and so forth. What I can do is I can take all those individual points and merge them together to make a heat map like this, showing where most of them are, and fading into where they're less common.
Right.
And on the left, those are just some different interesting images of some artifacts. In the lower left, there's a little manufacturing process going from your copper nugget to your finished copper ulu. The upper left, that's just showing people that trees were more common back then, before the forestry, especially old growth trees. That is a big difference between forests back then versus nowadays. Nowadays, a lot of the trees are younger.
Right.
And you'll notice something like that at a hardware store. Like the framing I have, like back here, that's all young lumber. Old growth, it's more durable. It's more durable type of wood. And that's what that diagram is showing up there.
Okay.
Upper right, that is a timeline made by Don Svan, the founder of the Great Lakes Copper Research Group. It's just his rough idea of when these items would have been first invented and just how long those cultures lasted for. And at the bottom of that, he has some important events that happened in Europe and Asia at that time.
Okay.
And on about the center of that graph on the left, we have an image of the sea caves from the Apostle Islands. This interesting island group in Lake Superior, southwest Lake Superior. What's interesting about those is the lake freezes during the winter, especially around the coast.
You can walk across.
Yeah, if the ice gets thick enough, like it was this year, you can walk across and go into those ice caves. And so that's interesting. So I've been wondering, because those caves are thought to have been around during the Archaic. Especially
I'm sure they would go look at it, if nothing else.
Yeah, because they're large enough, you can paddle your canoe right into them.
Right,
and
or like I said, during the winter, walk across.
Yeah, and like camp out in there if you're like ice fishing or something.
Yeah.
And beneath those images is a collection of stones. That is Jacobsville sandstone. Larry Furrow has talked about this type of stone a bit in his presentations because he thinks it's what they might have been using for their version of sandpaper for grinding down and polishing their copper tools. Because that type of sandstone, it's all around the Keweenaw Peninsula, right around the copper mines.
Okay.
And so I figured I'd include that in there just to show people what that looks like.
Right on. And then the next picture?
This is a production sequence showing, like if you're out in the woods, you find a piece of float copper, that would be your item all the way on the left.
Okay.
There was a metalsmith named Joe Neubauer. He's passed away now. He passed away several years ago. He devoted a lot of his time to replicating what he thinks was a likely manufacturing process for their copper items. And he worked alongside Larry Furrow and others to develop and refine this method. This is showing that process.
Cool.
You heat up your copper nugget, you pound on it, you can let it cool in air or quench it in water. That way the copper atoms realign and the copper doesn't fracture from being brittle after so much pounding.
Right.
Quench it, you heat it back up, realign those copper atoms, and then you pound again. And after so many cycles, depending on the size of your artifact, you'll end up with stage 7. Your finished artifact ready to be polished down with Jacobsville sandstone or whatever else they were using, maybe rubbed down with some fat or grease. The type of thing that you could hold up in the sun and it would shine.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then here's that picture closer up that you were talking about, right?
Yep. And something interesting I want to point out with this one, all the way on the left, that item, that fluted Clovis culture spear point, that was shown at an artifact show over 10 years ago. The Great Lakes Copper Research Group, they haven't been able to track down the collector of that item. It was shown there, and we have no idea where it is now, and so we don't know if it's authentic or not. It doesn't have any context.
That's unfortunate.
But yeah, like so many things with the old copper complex, it's just like a lot of context is missing.
That swallowtail thing looks like it would just be like a hand knife.
Yeah, it could be. That one actually has a longer tang than some of the other ones.
Huge.
Yeah, you could actually, like, I'll have to make a copper version or a clay version of that, because if you look over to the west coast, the Pacific coast, to what the Athabascans were making with copper, they were making stuff almost like that. Long blades, long tangs that you could use as handles, and these 2 protrusions that curl at the end. There are several of those items known from the west coast.
And then the next picture.
Okay, these are some diagnostic artifacts. This is featured in one of Don Swan's journals, one that was published in 2012. I think it's volume 8. And he has a bunch of these in that journal besides this. Number 1, that's your socketed beveled point. Like the item I had mentioned earlier, 23 inches long, 3.5 pounds.
Right.
That's one of those. Socketed, and it's beveled.
3.5 pounds.
3.5 pounds.
Damn.
Yeah, it's a big one. It's one of the biggest ones of that type known. Don Swan, he's giving it an invention age of sometime between 4,000 to 1,000 BCE.
Yeah.
And that matches the evidence we have currently. Because if you look over to the Ottawa River, the Alouette Island and Morrison Island sites I had mentioned earlier, they found those at that site. And that site, it's dated to between 4,100 and 3,400 BCE. And
then you have here a spud too, which I had never heard of a spud.
Yeah,
and I looked it up, and it's similar to an adze.
All a spud is, it's just a socketed adze. That's all a spud is. It's just a different name for it.
Right.
Yeah, and besides those, we have, and there's different types of spuds too. Like this one, that's a pointed spud. If you
Why
notice,
would you think that it would be different like that? Do you think it suits a different purpose?
Could be. That's the thing. A lot of these items don't have context, and we don't have a lot of infrastructure. Like pretty much no infrastructure, no houses, no workshops. Nothing like that's been found for the old copper complex. It's odd because these sites, like post holes and places that look like workshops where you'd expect to find buildings with better context.
Right.
Those are noted for certain excavation areas, but they're always like at the edges of their selected excavation areas, and they don't return to those. Like they'll say, hey, we've got post holes here. Looks like it could be a structure, maybe not. The excavation area isn't large enough for us to tell right now, and they don't come back to it. Or like northern Wisconsin, one of the best places for an actual workshop, like an actual building where they were working on stuff. They didn't get to it because there was construction going on at the time. So their excavation area was at the edge of that. And so
it sucks to get a good, how can you get a good context of what's going on if you don't do stuff like that?
And so, we have all these different tools. A lot of the time, they're found at the same sites, like Alouette Island and Morrison Island. They have a lot of these in context at that site, like triangulates, different notch spearheads, knives, fish hooks, spuds, gouges. They have a lot of that, even axes and wedges. And so it looks like a lot of these people, they're using like most of these tools at the same time. And it looks like some of these tools are being used like for different tasks, like for butchering or woodworking or hunting or fishing, like you get with the harpoons and the fish hooks. But we don't know if it's like a tribal thing, or if different clans have their own tools, if it's considered taboo for one clan to use.
See, now that would be
one type of tool.
Taboo kind of stuff is definitely totemism related. And I do agree, clans in general, if you have clans, almost guarantee, because because you're splitting things up. See, that's under, because if it was like, say, if shamanism without totemism, you wouldn't have clans, because just like an animist idea, everyone is involved. So there's not different people, and shamanism would see different families, but it wouldn't really break it into pieces. Clans is an understanding of a similar genetic or group identity to me, which is more totemism about the people.
Yeah, and maybe it's one of the things we can try and figure out once I get more of these maps made, so we can look at more of the data.
Yeah,
because it's really interesting, like how you have this concentration of like ulus or crescents, including the ornament versions, the tiny ones with like perforations that you would hang from your neck. Most of those cluster in northern Wisconsin and Michigan's Upper Peninsula, especially around Lake Superior. The same area we find the largest and the fanciest copper artifacts too. That same area. Then we head down to southern Wisconsin and the areas around Lake Superior. We get more of the utilitarian looking standardized items.
well, just like I know that so like we'll talk about it also sometime, but the earth diver myth. So the earth diver myth can be all over the place, but then how the earth diver is expressed in different cultures is not the same. And I wonder if that could also have something to do with like behaviors being different, or like you said, different tools, depending on different versions of the, what I mean by, because like, say the ones in the North Europe, a lot of it is birds, and some of them in North America are birds. But when you start to go to different areas, it's also like, I think the Great Lakes is like more muskrats and turtles and frogs and beavers. And then if you go towards the South, Louisiana or someone down there, it becomes something totally different. They're talking about crawfish and so I'm just saying, even in where someone could be thinking too simplistic, well, they're all, earth diver myths, like, yeah, and they're literally all not doing the same thing. And that's going to have a big effect. So here at Earth Diver. So that's going to have a big effect, like in the one in the upper left-hand corner, not the little tiny picture, but the bigger one where it says Earth Diver Mythology Distribution.
Yep.
This is a general thing. This is not the only type of earth diver distribution. There's depending on the problem is, like what I said, what I was trying to say with mythology. I'll show you this. This right here is two different maps. So mythologists break down earth diver into C6, just so you know. It's a certain Russian has broken down the mythology. I'll explain it to you one of these days, not now. But anyways, so the top picture is several of the versions of 6. So it's C6, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever, whole bunch of versions. Sometimes they'll have like C, B, 1C, more versions even inside of a version. Mm-hmm. And then it shows you the distribution. Like it says here that a general look at all these different ones, you can see they're all over the place, right? The blue dots.
They're all over the world.
195 traditions. But then if you do just a few of them, like here's the bottom one only has 1, 2, 3, 4 versions. It's a lot sparser, even though really they're all, that's what I was trying to say. So it goes back to like, when you're looking at a map, what thing are they using? Are they using the broadest expanse of what it could be Earth Diver, which adds a bunch of stuff? Because like in Europe, some of those are the devil is the Earth Diver, not a bird, or it's a bad deity or whatever, but it's working with the good deity to make the Earth. Anyways, my point is it's not a bird, where the rest of them in Siberia, a lot of it's birds. And then the ones down in India is more turtles. And then some of the ones like in the Great Lakes, like I said, are different than the ones in Alaska, are different than the ones maybe in South America or whatever, so they're Florida. They're not the same. So it's important. That's what so sometimes that's what I was trying to say is depends on what map you're using. So going back to this map right here that Arda made, this is just a standard version of C6, not the expanded ones. So this just shows it in North America and leaves out like the ones in Louisiana talking about crawfish that do the diving. This focusing more on the birds and whatever. But I'm just saying, so, and then a lot of it relates to Axis Mundi, which is like the Hopewell culture. They know, like you were talking about stuff being oriented. They believe there's an earth mound floating in the, primordial water, in a sense. That's what their mounds are sort of related to, which also what's that?
Just to add one thing, since we're talking about the mounds and the primordial waters in the Hopewell, down at Poverty Point, late Archaic to Terminal Archaic, before the Hopewell was even around, one of the lead researchers at that site right now, Seth Grooms, he's theorized alongside Tristan Kidder, another researcher focusing on that site, that what Poverty Point is representing is like the earth diver myth, like that myth itself made into an earthwork, because they built the largest mound A, which they think is representing a bird.
Right.
They built it right on top of a marsh. Like the entire area was saturated and wet before they built that.
Right. And that's what I was trying to say about going back to, like I said, I want to see where we put the mythology spread with the artifacts and the stuff, because then you really start to understand. Otherwise, it seems like all this is separate. Because like the Mississippi cosmology is kind of similar, has the earth, in a sense, flat little earth mound, and then a tree grows out of it, which is the same as the Axis Mundi that the Hopewell have. It's just a little bit more evolved version, in a sense.
Yeah, and I think even the Aztec have something like that.
Yes, they do. You're right. That's what I'm trying to say, is when you start to understand, you start to see there's deeper connection. And the reason it looks like stars below is that's the underworld or nighttime, which, like I said, and the other one is the layers of the above world. There's multiple layers. Yeah, the mythology stuff is very interesting, because a lot of times, like I said, you start to understand the context of why these things are similar or whatever, or what's going on. If you don't understand this, then you would think that the North America and North Asia are not connected, in a sense, when they actually are doing similar stuff.
Yeah, quite a lot of connections between Asia and the Americas, not just with mythology, but with artifacts too.
Yes,
especially with Siberia.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I agree 100%. Not just like pairing the mythology with the artifacts and pairing those with the genetics to figure out the migrations.
Absolutely. And that's what I was saying. I think it would be cool for you to do that.
Yeah, that's something I could do.
Yeah. Because like I said, once you're with me and you start to get more in understanding of this mythology stuff and its distributions, at least, a better idea, because there's stuff I can show you where you can go look. I can show you where the mythology database is and where you can look it up yourself and start because like the one I showed, you literally can click on all 198 and understand its specific thing. It's made to do searches. So I'm just saying that I feel that, in fact, I'm going to give it to you. Not that I'm trying not to give it to everybody else too, but I'm just saying I think people that are doing research, it's helpful to have stuff, because if I didn't tell you, you wouldn't know that there's such a thing. No. I didn't know. You never hear atheists talk about it. So if you don't have these resources that are available, you're kind of limited. You have to sign up, but it's free. It doesn't cost anything. Just so you know, which I think is the way everything should be. As an anarchist, I'm pro sharing knowledge for free. It's also why I do all this stuff for free. And I my point is I want to be the most help to people, and it's a limitation to be more help by charging. Although I totally understand people that do charge, because I do all this work and it costs money to even do the work. And then if, I don't have money, then I can't do it.
Yeah. One of my colleagues who focuses on mapping historical cultures, he's releasing a lot of his stuff for free right now.
Right.
But he said before he would like to earn a living from this. That way he can do it full time.
I agree. And I would like the same, because I feel like I'm doing all this stuff. I would like to be able to, at least, not that I have to make a lot of money, but just enough to keep doing it without having to, find other ways to make money.
Yeah. And I would like to do this stuff full time too. But with these maps, especially the old copper complex, I wanted to put these out for free. That way the most people could look at these. It's not locked behind a paywall.
Right.
One of the least investigated, little understood cultures in North American prehistory. I'm not gonna lock that behind a paywall paywall. Like if
Well,
more
and
people,
I really appreciate and I respect you for doing that. I said, that's the
that's
same
one of the
thing. But
that's one of the big problems that the general public and even like some of the alternative researchers had mentioned. Like so much of this stuff is locked behind paywalls. Like,
yeah, I'm
how are
gonna
you gonna
message you the site to go look up Mythology. This has literal crap tons of information. You just have to. I just sent it to you through Messenger on X. That because like I said, you can go. All you got to do is I'll have to probably help you, and I should probably do a thing where I show people here. Like in fact, I'll do that now. I'll just show people me going onto it, and then like what you can do, so you can understand how to use it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Become more educated on mythology. Okay, so here's all you have to do is sign up for the link, which that's all I did. And then once you sign in, this is the first thing you see, just so you know. Okay. So in the corner, see where this now you could put ideas, like you could say primordial waters, right? And just hit search for narratives, and it will give you information. But look how crappy that is. It literally, you see it? It shows one in Italy, one in Iraq, and one in Peru. The hell, and one in Miramar or whatever, or Indonesia. I mean, it's literally one of the biggest things in the entire world. It's in Sumerian, it's in Babylonian, it's in African, it's in Chinese, and the fact that it doesn't show up, so depends also to me. So let's put chaotic water, because sometimes it's how they're calling it.
Yeah, it could be. I was just gonna mention something like that. It could be a different term.
So I'm just trying to show you this. I don't know if I spelled chaotic right. Did I spell that right?
Yeah, that looks right.
Let's see. Does that give us any more? Just to try to show you. And I don't usually do it this way. It literally shows only one. Wow, that sucks.
Yeah.
Okay, so
where is that?
Oh, this is no good. So I just want to show you. That's actually not how I search. What I do is see where it says browse Birkin's motifs. You click on that. Now I just generally. What's that?
Okay, yeah. No, I'm looking at the different categories. Okay,
right. See, sun, moon, disaster, fire, gender, sex, agriculture, fertility.
Yeah.
That's one way to do it. And like see disasters or whatever. What I do generally is I read down this. By the way, these are just summaries. So you say if I just the ancient sun, right? We can just click on A1, right? The first thing it shows, and it tells you what other things match that motif, A and A1A, and then it tells you a little bit about what's it about. But then it tells you similar, because see, there's top 10 things that are similar to that. And then it tells you here is similarity. How similar? 93%. See what I'm saying? The bottom one, 90%, which is still pretty similar, right?
Oh, what's that bottom? Individual layers or categories of Earth differ in color? I'm looking at the bottom, the very last one.
The very last thing it lists? Oh, individual layers, right? Yeah. So then you could click on that, right, and see what is that. So then it will tell you it's colored tiers of the Earth, and then it tells you what that means. Individual layers, cloud skies, the colors it's talking about. And let's just say, so you want to know how. If you wanted to know, I wanted to know, well, how much is that distributed in a map? You click on it, and then it will tell me a little summary of it. And then it tells you stuff that matches, but it also gives me a map. So just showing you how to use that.
Yeah, that would be interesting, because I could map out these myths.
You can map up different ones. So let's go back to his thing, right? His motifs. So let's go down like how we're talking about Earth Diver, right? So you go down, you look, and you find C, because these are A. You go bum bum bum, get down to where C is at, which you see there's a lot, and these are all different ones. See, like here, like B52, it says before the flood there was no mountains. See, and you could click on that if you wanted to, and then it would tell you a summary, and you can click on even more detail if you wanted to know the different versions of it. And then see flying over the world, the bird, usually a vulture. You see, it tells you stuff.
Yeah.
And it tells you a summary of things. And here, look at the map. To give you a map dispersal.
Okay. That's actually, that is incredibly useful. Oh my God.
It's awesome as hell. So let's go back to what I was trying to say about Earth Diver, because I want you to be able to use this, because then you can kick some ass, man, and put some stuff together that people will be like blown away. What the fuck?
Goodness, I'm gonna have to go through this and like comb through this thing.
Right, so I told you Earth Diver is C6. So click on C6, and it tells you obtaining valuables from the underworld is the main motif that they're giving it. That's an important too. See, that description is someone's in mythology and folklores like simplified cliff note, just so you understand. Because you read the context, right? It says there's 16 submotifs, right? That's a lot. See, it says it down at the bottom where it says, click here if you'd like to see a distribution map of all C6 motifs. You can click that, and then it tells you which ones it's giving you. Here's the ones it gives you, right? It tells you all up on top. It tells you which the items it's using. Then it says the diver. The diver is a turtle or frog. You can click. By the way, you can click on just that, and it'll give you the map down at the bottom. It'll give you a map of just the turtle frog. Just so you know, right? So, but this is the one. See here, look. Here's the map of all of it together. There, you see it now?
Yeah, there we go.
Right. I know. Like, I was trying to give you like and other people to understand this is how you do it, and it's and what it's called. So anyone who's wondering, just type in mythologydatabase.com. So not.
Sounds.
But anyways, just it really helps to be able to investigate this stuff, and you can click like you see where it says up there the different motifs. So the one we know is a diver. The other one of the divers is a turtle or frog. The other one of the diver is a muskrat, or it could be a beaver. Then the different one is the bird is successful and unsuccessful divers. Then the different one is a diver is a bird. But by the way, you can click on these and you can get more information of each thing, not just its little clip note.
I'm looking at C6G right now, the one that says the diver is a boar.
Right, diver's a boar.
I haven't heard of that before.
I hadn't actually heard of that either. You notice
the diver is a boar.
One place.
Like I've heard of frog, water bird, crawfish.
But see, here shows where it's at, and it is at India.
Whoa, actually, that kind of like from what I know about Indian. Like Hindu mythology, that I think that kind of makes sense, like that context. But I need to look into it.
Right, and then it says this motif is found in one tradition. It tells you the tradition, Bondo. It tells you other information about it, and then you can read about it. See, it says
cool.
Ancient India, South Asia. It tells you about their thing. The Raja daughter grew out of a pumpkin seed. Anyways, and you notice too, like there's little magnifying glasses, so you can click that, and that gives you more information to understand.
Gosh,
right?
That's cool, and it even gives you the citations too.
Yep, there's a whole bunch of stuff, and I only showed you like the one. So there's a different stuff, but to me that I like that breakdown. So we'll go into something else, of course, back to the thing. But I just wanted you, and we're almost done. For today. But I just wanted to get you more information of how to do mythology research than you probably had before.
Yeah, because I like stuff for Earth Diver myth, like the general regions of creation stories, like born from chaos, or like bringing up mud from the bottom of the ocean.
Right.
Like you have a map of those regions laid out. I was working with that map for a little while. So like right now I have like a general understanding of like shamanism, totemism, animism, things like that. But like I've said, like the nitty gritty details, the stuff that you focused on, I'm still lacking there.
Right. And that's what I said.
I really appreciate that you shared that website with me. That'll give me a chance.
Thank you. And there's stuff like that I can share with you that like I said, that'll help you expand beyond what, you're at now. Because my goal is I would love for you to be an expert, like, on this stuff. I mean, everybody. I want people to be informed, because then we have actually better thinking. And also I feel like a lot of people also will say, "Oh, we'll never know." I've heard some atheists say this, "We'll never know what people used to believe." And I'm like, have you ever looked? Because there's a lot of information, probably more than you thought. As much as you think that some people do science real nerdy or whatever, people have done that with mythology for hundreds of years.
Yeah, so like if you pair the artifacts with the oral traditions and sites, sure, you're not going to have like 100% accurate like idea of what they believed, but you'll have a general sense something
Correct.
something like that.
Yeah.
And it's better than nothing.
It's
I
better
think it is.
than now where people don't even have either.
And it's better than people just making up stories. Making up fairy tales.
I'm like you. I want to know the real facts. I do not want to make stuff up. I don't want to invent new, myths in a sense, because I'm guessing, without any substantial reason why I'm, coming up with these. And so I feel like that we both do that. We both really don't want to just openly guess.
No, and like I had mentioned earlier with the tobacco, like to me, I think it looks like the tobacco pipes and the tobacco they're smoking comes from Western North America,
Right.
Because it would line up with the evidence, not just that you've talked about, but others have talked about with the Algonquin migrations from the Pacific
Correct.
Northwest, that area. But if they
Correct.
do isotope testing or like testing on the residues in those tobacco pipes, especially down south, and it turns out that the species is coming from that southern variant from like Central America and South America.
Right.
I don't have a problem with that if that's what the evidence shows.
I agree totally. Speaking of the Algonquin movement, so this is what I told you, and there's a shell mound, and then the fact that they call it the Great Spirit and stuff, the island of the Great Spirit. I think that's also an interesting thing.
Oh no, yeah, it is. And I'm gonna have to head back and look around Lake Superior and not just that, like Michigan and Huron, to see if like how many like archaic shell mounds are around there.
Like I said, I think you should, because I think they're a bigger deal than people think.
Yeah,
that's, as you know, what I keep trying to do, just like you, is show the stuff people have missed.
Yeah, because I've heard them mentioned in passing, but to have like an actual article in front of me that I can read that focuses on the site, like with C14 dates, or like you had mentioned, like one of those articles that only a handful of people have actually bought and read.
Right.
Like that's the material I want to go after, because it's the nitty gritty stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I have good data on shell mounds for the coast and for the shell mound archaic, not around the Great Lakes.
Right on.
I have good data for the artifacts made of shells, not if there's any shell middens around there. So that's something I need to dig my heels in and focus on.
Yeah, and we're gonna have. I told you we're gonna do more videos even on the old copper culture. But next time I want to do the one on mythology, because I want to do mythology with you, and then archaeology, and then mythology. So maybe we'll do mythology and then go back to the copper culture again and finish more of it, and then do mythology again, and then go to more copper culture and finish it, because I do think it's really an important thing, and you're also very skilled at it, and so I think it's a benefit.
I'm like one of the few people that's actively researching it right now. So
right. and I appreciate that.
Well, no, some people need to be researching it, because it's once people learn about it, it blows their minds. The issue is it's a niche topic still somehow, So when you show people these items for the first time, their mind jumps to Greek or Roman or Chinese items. And even some people have gone to say, the Minoans were over here, that it was a failed Minoan colony or something like that. No.
Ridiculous.
The copper isn't lost. It's in the ground. But so few people actually know about it. And even fewer people have done what like Larry Furrow or Susan Martin or I have done, get into the articles and try to piece together every little bit of information that we know about this culture and who these ancient people actually were, to the best that we can figure out with the evidence available.
I agree. Well, I appreciate you, coming in and joining me, and I had fun, and I hope you did as well.
Yeah, and I thank you for sharing that website with me. I'm actually gonna take a look at that once this podcast finishes up.
Right on.
I need to.
Yeah, well, I want you to be more proficient on mythology, and that is a great way to start doing it. That something that a lot of people don't know about. Like they're like, oh, where do you find that? There's literally a thing.
There's a whole site just dedicated to it with citations and maps.
Someone has actually done the work. So, all right, well, I go ahead and tell people where to find you and all that.
Okay, I go by CopperViolette on social media. You can find me on Reddit, I'm on X. I've been posting there a lot lately. On Reddit, I only post occasionally now. Though I should really get back to that. The main place I'm posting right now on there is the Ancient Americas subreddit. It's dedicated to the YouTube channel. Besides Reddit and X, I'm on Facebook. I go by Dylan Violette, my real name there. That's my personal account. If you have any questions, and you want to have more of like a personal chat about this stuff, just send me a message. I don't bite.
Right on.
Yeah, and I have an academia.edu page also. I only have a couple maps on there right now, but eventually, once I get a lot of this stuff more tightened up, I will be posting articles that you would expect to find from a professional with a PhD or a bachelor's, even though I don't have those right now.
Right on.
And so that's where I'm at right now. I don't have a professional YouTube channel. I'm not making videos or anything, though people have asked me.
Well, you are making videos.
Yeah, yeah, I am. I'm making podcast videos that are going on YouTube. You're right about that.
Yeah, they are.
But,
you are. I mean,
yeah.
you don't have your own personal channel, but
No.
you are getting exposure now.
Yeah. So I'm making videos, just not on a personal YouTube channel of mine. I don't have one of those yet, and I don't actually know if I'm going to start one of those up. I've been humming and hawing for a few years about that.
Yeah, and you're going to have a chance to be with me and to develop more before you did that anyway. So, right on. Well, everyone, I appreciate you checking it out, and we'll be doing it again. All right.
All right. See you next time.
Take care.
Hello, and welcome to my channel. I am Damien Marie AtHope. In the simplest terms, I am an atheist-humanist philosopher and prehistorical writer-researcher at DamienMarieAtHope.com. I am specifically an axiological atheist. An axiological atheism can be thought to involve ethical and value theory reasoned and moral argument driven apatheism, ignosticism, atheism, anti-theism, anti-religionism, secularism, and humanism. Axiological atheists can be understood as a value theory or a value science atheist. As an axiological atheism's ethically reasoned and constructive pro-humanity, I am an axiological thinker, value theorist. The science of goodness, worthiness, usefulness, valuableness, virtue, reliableness, accuracy, validity, morality, integrity, beneficialness, etc., etc. We axiologists have a value consciousness. And in general, we see the architecture of humanistic humanitarianism value in people that we see as dignity beings. Places and things are not. Axiology is a value theory. In its broadest sense, it involves areas of philosophy that are deemed to encompass some evaluative or evaluation aspect. Therefore, it crosses almost all domains in some way or another. Now for a more detailed terms as to what I am. I am an axiological atheist, an anti-theist, an anti-religionist, secularist, humanist, rationalist, writer, artist, poet, philosopher, advocate, activist with schooling in psychology, sociology, as well as I am an autodidact, self-taught in science, archaeology, anthropology, and philosophy. I promote science and am against pseudoscience, pseudohistory, pseudomorality, things that are found in religion.